Howdy, friends. Welcome back to the Cactus Atlas. Our short stay at Castle Rock State Park is over. We saw some cool things, giant rocks, mysterious pictographs, and more remnants of the California Trail. We're definitely going to be keeping this one in mind for the future as we continue our journey homeward.
Well, good morning from Smoky Mountain Campground at Castle Rock State Park in Idaho. Our last episode found us arriving here, setting up the tent, and the tent has been removed. The truck is packed, and we're actually already ready to hit the road. And today's a long one, so I wanted to get an early start, and the sun just came up. So a couple quick notes before we hit the road here about my accommodations last night. This is a fantastic campground. There are some sites that are kind of close together, but many of them are very, very well spaced apart. Perfect privacy, great night's sleep. Woke up to a nice, cool, maybe even cold morning. My only regret is we didn't really have a lot of time to explore Castle Rock's State Park. We kind of dipped our toes in on the last episode. We saw some cool things, so if you missed that episode, be sure to check it out. But this morning, on the way out of here, we're driving through another portion, another part of like a reserve called City of Rocks. So I assume a little bit more of the same, but free, and it happens to be on our route. So we've got a lot to do today. I think like 6 hours of driving or something with all the stops. So that's why I wanted to get started early. So I think, without further ado, let's get in the truck and hit the road, and I'll talk to you a little bit more from inside the cab of the truck. All right, everybody, let's leave Castle Rock State Park. I like this campground a lot. I like the park. I feel like I left lots left to explore, but you know how it is. These are travel days where we don't get too much time. Haven't even been here 24 hours basically since I set up camp, and we're moving. But I feel good though. I got up really early and we're probably about 45 minutes ahead of my required departure time. And I'm gonna use a little bit of extra time before we head out where we need to go. I'm gonna try something. Go into town, quote unquote. I don't know if I could call it really a town, but there's a few amenities of a couple places, including an old, like a mom and pop kind of small town general store with a gas pump. I have a full tank of gas. I filled up in a town yesterday, I don't know, maybe about 20-30 minutes before I got here. And today it's important because we're in Nevada where we're going. I predict there's going to be nothing at all for us service-wise, or it's going to be very sparse. So having a full tank of gas and being prepared, I think, is very important for today's journey. But here's the town of, what was the name of this? Almo, I think, ALMO. There's this place called Rock City. I thought it was a rock shop, but it's actually pizza. And maybe more than just pizza. And there's a steakhouse. I don't know if things are in full service right now here, but it is 7:20 a.m. currently out here, and I'm hoping that this shop is open. Maybe it's not, and if not, we'll make do. But I figured, in the tradition of continuing like gas station, general store, coffee breaks, I just fully committed to it at this point. We're almost done with the trip, so I thought this might be a good one to add to the list to see what a small town, like a really small town, general store coffee might be like, assuming they have coffee, but what kind of general store with a gas pump doesn't sell coffee? The answer is this one, because it doesn't appear to be open. Maybe, let's see. It's Tracy General Store, closed. Now, I'm not gonna knock them for being closed. I don't think I even need to top off the tank, to be honest. Because why would you get up early to service nobody, basically? Oh well. So we're just gonna hit it. We're gonna hit it hard. We're going for it, folks. At least I got some water here. Let's get hydrated. So let's head in the City of Rocks and see what this is all about. Gonna be I study the map. I actually picked up this from the visitor center down there. It's really helpful. So it actually is a map of the roads in case we have connectivity issues anywhere, which I imagine we will. Kind of studied the direction I need to go, the town I need to get to. There's a town called Lynn, L-Y-N-N. I'm hoping they've got gas and services there. Not really for gas, but maybe for coffee after we're done with this stretch. And I do know, I think we're gonna have quite a bit of like gravel road, washboardy roads, according to the ranger working in there. Nothing difficult, but I guess why not rattle ourselves this morning a bit? It is beautiful out here, isn't it? This Idaho morning. But the other important note is, like, we're leaving Idaho for the last time. We will not be back in Idaho on this trip, and I'm sad about that because I found that Idaho, my little sampler tour here, and the things that I've seen, Massacre Rock State Park, Twin Falls, driving through it, saw some of the Cache National Forest, the Napoleon Dynamite House, a wonderful state, an absolutely beautiful, wonderful state. I could say confidently in my top 5 maybe so far of what I like, the kind of stuff I like. And it's a treasure trove that I've barely opened the chest and peeked in. So it's ripe for coming back and exploring more, and maybe even spending a whole week in Idaho the next time I get to travel, which I don't know when that's gonna be, but Idaho, love it, love it, love it. Is it me, or does it seem like every state has a city of rocks or something? There's one in New Mexico, I believe, with a campground that I want to stay at. I think it is called City of Rocks. There's one here. Every state seems to have one. There's a sign right there. Let's just say hi. This is like the low budget, cheap version of getting a, you know what? No, I was gonna get out, but we're gonna keep going. But there you are, City of Rocks National Reserve, an international dark sky park. And my understanding is it's free. There's really you don't pay to get in here, but Castle Rocks, it's $7 to get in. And if you camp, maybe that's my only gripe my only nitpick about Castle Rocks, is it felt like one night there is more expensive. I was thinking about it though. My site had an electric hookup. I don't know if they all do. And water, which is great for RVs, but for a tent camper, it's pretty much pointless. So I'm probably paying for that a little bit. Just reading signs. Oh yeah, this is bumpy back here. But yeah, that was one of the more expensive places to stay, and they actually charge you the $7 fee to get in Castle Rocks. This is the first time I've ever seen that, to be honest. But it's a beautiful place. But if you're on a budget, maybe not the best thing. And I think I might see what might be a historic ranch that I read about. There's like this old shell of a home down here. I remember being in the visitor center seeing something about that. You're starting to see big rocks on the horizon here. I like big rocks. I like them a lot. But if we can mix a little bit of history this morning, which we are, there's another piece of history in here that I'm the most excited to see, and it's coming up in a few minutes, probably in the video, but I'll save it for when we get there. Something similar to what we've seen off of the Oregon Trail, except this one is one off of the California Trail. Similar time, similar intent by the people traveling westward. A little bit of a different trail. So what do we have here? Sweet. very cool. Wait, you're not gonna let me get in there? Is it fenced up or something? Well, we'll see what we can do. So the first thing to take note of is just how beautiful it is here in this morning light. It's wonderful. But let's see if we can get in here. What does this say? No trespassing private property. So I don't know if this is what I thought it was. I saw something in the visitor center about a historic ranch, and I thought it was in Castle Rocks. It might have been. It might have been like near where the guests stay. I didn't film it because I wasn't sure. But this is an old looking structure, even though it's private property here. It's a really pretty foundation. You can see it's probably not as old as I thought. Got concrete like a sidewalk. I guess it could be old and later owners put in like a concrete sidewalk. You don't really see that in 1800s homes that I explore out here in these regions, if that's what this is, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is. Well, I don't like that. I respect private property, of course, and the principle behind it, but when it works against us, I don't like it. That building is catching the morning light just right, I would say. I wonder who lived here. Didn't do any research really on this. It's just a quick, I've been saying that this whole trip. This is just a very quick, casual, I shouldn't say quick, but it's just a casual travel vlog with not much research being done, but a scouting mission is what I'll call it. So I can do research in the future should I decide to come back and explain more of what these things are. And I believe, though, the land here is the land of the Shoshone people. And I forget, I was reading about their name for what we call, I guess, the City of Rocks. This is all visitor center knowledge that I've already forgotten, and they were words in different languages I don't speak, so. But I do want to point out, I do focus a lot on pioneer history, settler history, you want to say, I guess, in the 1800s. But I do like to point out and make mention that these were not the first people here by a long shot. And the more I age and think about life and think about things and people's struggles and how they lived, I'm starting to become more fascinated with the indigenous people's lives, and going really far back. And, I think some might argue, well, they weren't technologically advanced and stuff, but I'm fascinated with their life and how they would have lived off the land and lived in harmony with the land. The ultimate conservationist. Over the years, I've learned a lot about the historic tribes and indigenous people from my neck of the woods, like the Hohokam, certainly, the ancestral Puebloans, or Anasazi as the archaeologist would say, or the Fremont culture, things like that. And then of course their descendants, like the Tohono O'odham tribe. And I still have so much more to learn there, but now up in these northern climes, I'm very out of my wheelhouse. I'm starting to get to know the territory of the various Shoshone tribes, all the way down to Death Valley, for example, and you see their names up here in this region in Idaho. So it's really interesting to start to learn, how tribes were distributed, how even within certain peoples, there were separate groups. I think the Yavapai is one that comes to mind. I think there were 4 different bands of the Yavapai where I'm from, if I remember correctly. But I want to be careful and respectful. I don't want to say anything incorrect. I'm always open to comments to correct if I say something incorrect. But yeah, it's just old, it's very fascinating settler pioneer history, but maybe more fascinating, thinking about the indigenous people and trying to unravel the mysteries of pasts that are starting to get blurred with time, from times before Columbus. I'm doing pretty good here without coffee, aren't I? I got a lot to say. I always seem to have a lot to say. Sometimes it's probably not the best or the most intelligent, but all right. I've admired the structure for now, and let's continue on down the road. All right, so I was looking in here to see if there's any information about what this structure is, and I don't see anything. However, it reminded me, as you look at the map, it shows the path of the California Trail. And this is back 1840s to the 1860s is when that was in the most heavy use. And I think hundreds of thousands of people traveled along that route in things called prairie schooners. And prairie schooners are what I always mistakenly refer to as Conestoga wagons. They have like the canvas, like rounded tops on them, but they're much smaller. So I learned something new yesterday. There is a difference. And Conestoga wagons do look similar with the big canvas rounded tops, but they're huge. And and it looks like they required like teams of mules to pull the thing. Prairie schooners, as we learned yesterday, are much smaller, probably like single family things to haul your belongings in. It's a very small wagon, and typically people didn't even ride in the wagon. They would walk alongside the wagon for like 2,000 miles. These trails were like the Oregon Trail and then this California Trail. The neat thing is that we're pretty much following I don't think we're on the actual historic side of the trail, and probably a lot of it's been overgrown under sagebrush out here, but it followed the same general path we're on. So out to the left, the right, I don't know, somewhere out there in our field of view, we're basically following the same route that these settlers did in the 1840s to the 1860s, and I find that fascinating. I love that, and we're going to see evidence of this very soon today on this trip. But you're starting to see these really cool rock formations now come into view, which is the main draw out here. But this area was basically held significance to not only the early settlers, but to, like I said, the indigenous people for hundreds, if not thousands of years beforehand. But what is this here? Camp Rock Immigrant Signatures. That's not the one that I was looking for, but it's along the same lines. I guess what I'm getting at is there's a thing called Register Rock up here, just like the one we saw near Massacre Rocks. And the settlers that passed through in those times etched their names or wrote their names in the rock. So this said something about immigrant. The immigrants, I assume, being the ones coming in the prairie schooners, says their signatures are on this rock. If it's called Camp Rock, I wonder if this was an area they camped at. Like, Register Rock was near Massacre Rocks, for example, was an area where they would kind of stop and rest and camp overnight. So I'm wondering if it's called Camp Rock, that would make sense. See if we can find, actually I see I could see it from here. Wow. So this is basically warning you that the area is under surveillance and not to climb on the rock. It's got archaeological significance. It's under a Protection Act, which means, pointing that out because that means there's good stuff to see, and I think that some good stuff to see is right over here. So you would have travelers in this time frame we're talking about. This would be a great little place to camp probably. And there's probably modern graffiti mixed in if I had to guess, but right here, I don't know if this is, the style of writing looks like what we see. I don't know, they had different cool writing back then. J. Bow. I'm gonna guess that is the scribblings, the markings of someone there, but I don't see dates. Usually it'll be accompanied by a date, like 18 something or another, but maybe that came off with time, but maybe we'll walk around the back and see. But this, to me, they probably did that with some kind of like charcoal, or I've seen this exact technique time and time again. But, assuming this is of that era, I really wish I could see a date. I kind of do. I want to say, I don't know if that's DEC or something, but over here I almost can make out an 1870 something, but The reason why I think it is I don't know why they did it. Like a lot of the letters, like those T's, like have those like little fancy, not gonna touch it, but you see that right there? Like that style, like in all caps like that. It has a style to it that they all seem to have back then, or many of them did. But it's pretty safe to say that if something's called Camp Rock, and that name has traveled through time, that this would be a stop on the California Trail where tired settlers for the day would stop in this inset area here in the shade, because they traveled during the summer months. So it would have been a nice, cool respite for these people. And it was probably helpful to have named landmarks like that, just as we travel today from town to town. These people were traveling before there was no town to fill up your gas tank or anything like that. So there were oftentimes, like Chimney Rock is one that I could think of, like recognizable landmarks on that environment. Massacre Rocks, where you had probably planned, I'm guessing, to go from place to place every day. If you didn't have problems, that is, and have a wagon axle break or something on you like that. So these may have been the early convenience stores with no store. The stopping points. So they do have a fence here protecting something. So I'm gonna guess it's probably, this is probably the prime time spot. It's gonna inset like the front. Maybe the front wasn't original. I think it is. And these are very similar too, if you look at it. There you go. Now we got dates. And we got lots of names. So people would travel and they'd make their mark and say, hey, Glen with the Cactus Atlas was here in 1880. So basically they talk about how these pioneers would come and they'd climb as high as they could climb and make their mark. And then sometimes, you would be a traveler passing through and you'd see the name of somebody you knew who passed through a couple years before. Which probably added hope. But it also mentions that the Shoshone people and many other, pretty much every tribe I've studied, like going back in history, they would also do the same thing with petroglyphs and pictographs. But this is amazing. So one that caught my attention is the 1880. It's a little bit late for the time frame of the California Trail, is it not? I'm looking for any I see a 1919, I see a 85, I assume that would be 1885. I'm looking for anything 1860s or earlier, and there are a lot of faded ones. I think I see an 1897. So a little bit later in time than the time frames talked about in the brochures and stuff. But I am sure somewhere, if you could see them all clearly, I'm sure it would start to pop out and come to view, and maybe you guys would see better than I do. I see there's an 1840, I'm pretty sure there's an 1843 up there. I don't see a name with it, but you could see faded ones, so I'm guessing the older it was, the harder they are to read now, and they eventually would fade with time. To me, it's just a silent reminder of a different time that would be unrecognizable to us today, but fascinating to see, fascinating to be part of it, and part of our country's history. And none of these people are around to tell the tale anymore, and this is all that's left. But thank goodness they did that. I always find that to be just amazing to see. I love this kind of stuff. Camp Rock. And it does add a more special significance for me. You could come here for geology and an interest in that, or just the strange shapes and enjoying the rocks. But just knowing rocks don't change, the landscape doesn't change that dramatically in that short amount of time, between our time and these people seems like, for us, as humans, that's a long time. But in geological terms, that's not even a blink of an eye. Like, we just started the blink an eye barely. And this landscape probably looks, in many ways, identical to what they would have seen with their own eyes. And their markings will almost certainly disappear and be erased to time before these rocks even begin to change significantly enough that they look different. If I had to surmise about that. I'm standing on the same ground where I assume they were making campfires, resting, camping, basically just like we've been doing, camping. And then I presume using the charcoal, the leftover coals and stuff to make their markings on the rock like that. And because it's under an overhang, I'm guessing it's a little bit protected from the elements and the rain and the snow. So, but over time, you can already see some that are almost lost to time. But these rocks stand the test of time. Wow, man, that was pretty deep, dude. Pretty deep. It actually is to me. If you can take your mind there and use your imagination and try to see prairie schooners traversing here or early morning, because these people got up early, they didn't mess around. They probably would have already been on their way by now, I'm guessing. Or maybe they're just kind of getting started, at the campground, people are packing up. They would be doing the same, getting their wagons and their animals all ready, hearing the hustle and bustle, and you'd eventually see the wagon trains leave and then the new ones coming in all summer long. So cool. Almost makes me wonder if the actual trail ran on that other side of the rocks. Not necessarily. I think at Massacre Rocks, I'm trying to think. We saw an actual portion of the real trail, one of the rare leftovers. And I don't know anything about the California Trail, if there are any wagon ruts to see or any evidence of the actual trail itself that's left. And I always wonder how, on maps, in this booklet that I have, how do they actually know the precise route where it went? Based on evidence. Can you go look under the sagebrush out here, for example, and then actually find where the earth is depressed from years of wagons going over it? Is it discoverable? Is it just gone? I'm guessing it's gone. Lost to time mostly, but if there are any segments of that trail to be seen, let me know, because to me that's fascinating. I didn't realize, even with the Oregon Trail, my understanding that I learned at Massacre Rocks is there's nothing left other than the one little piece we saw. I'm gonna guess maybe a couple others somewhere else, but same with this kind of thing. So how do they know with precision where the trail was, or is it really just an approximation? My guess is historical records and writings, and people wrote journals. We saw there's a journal snippet back there on that interpretive sign, that I was kind of telling you about. A lady said she would see the names of people that she knew that passed by a couple years ago. So certainly they would have talked about the main things like a camp rock or a chimney rock in journals, but maybe if you piece it all together like a puzzle, it paints the picture of the route, the precise route that they followed. So basically, if you look at this map, it might be hard to see, there's a red dotted line on there. Sometimes it splits. That red dotted line is the route of the California Trail. So to me, it looks like the trail maybe was on the other side of the rock, but as we were driving in, it looked like the trail split, and today's modern road is in between where it split and kind of converged back together. So we're really, truly within feet probably of the actual historic trail that these people took. But I don't think this modern road follows precisely the trail, but it kind of just goes the same direction. And I am correct, by the way, that this is not register rock. So there's going to be another thing like this coming up here shortly that we get to see that probably has even more names on it, like we saw at Massacre Rocks and the Oregon Trail. So neat. I'm enjoying this more than Castle Rocks already. No offense to Castle Rocks, it's awesome, but it seems like Castle Rocks is more about rock climbing and enjoying the geology, and as opposed to like the pioneer California trail history that we're exploring currently. Even though I'm a modern traveler with a different mission today, I saw a scribbling of like a really large name up on the side of a rock up there. Just one. I don't think these are it. I'm looking for signs that say, hey, this is register rock, or this is this or that. But anyway, like as a modern traveler, I'm traveling the Western US in this modern truck. My life is much easier than these people's were. Not saying better, just saying easier. This is Treasure Rock. This is one of my stops. I don't think this is actually anything of historic significance, unless there was a treasure around here, then maybe. But I'll continue my thought outside. I'm willing to bet if you were able to scour every rock in this place, every crevice, imagine what you'd find. Imagine what you might find. But we're at Treasure Rock. I don't know anything about it, but I do know there's a beautiful view over here overlooking this area, so we're gonna check that out. But let's see why they call this Treasure Rock. Very brief summary of this. This is called Treasure Rock, but this is really talking about the Shoshone people and how an Indian chief, Chief Pocatello, who lived from 1815 to 1844, would have been hanging out in his buffalo robe, gazing down at travelers from the heights, looking down at what we call City of Rocks, seeing all these immigrants passing through, and eventually kind of worked out deals where, you know, he would get compensation for his tribe from travelers in terms of goods, for basically, you know, destroying native grasses, and, you know, I'm sure they brought cattle through here that just gobbled everything up and all that. Of course, there was something called the Bear River Massacre. I actually think I drove by that on my trip and didn't have time to stop and saw a historic sign, but eventually, like other tribes, they had to succumb to the US government later on, probably in the 1860s, I think. And the massacre at Bear River was in 1863, but I'm guessing what they mean by Treasure Rock is that these are the treasured rocks of the Shoshone people that we've been talking about, that were here for hundreds of years, maybe millennia, I don't know, before these immigrants started passing through with their hungry cattle, eating up all of the native grasses and tearing up the place. But it's true. I'm gonna sit up here and we can pretend to be Chief Pocatello and gaze down at this landscape. I don't know if they were insinuating that this is the spot that he would. I don't think it said that, but maybe that's what they meant. Maybe it was a similar vantage point. Imagine you were that chief sitting up here watching, like, with time, more and more and more of these prairie schooners and probably oxen, mules, I don't know, just passing through hundreds of thousands of people, crazed, looking for a better way of life and riches and gold, many of which wouldn't find that. But the hope, the excitement drove them on. Just imagine that, like seeing, like, day after day during the summer months, like thousands of people in their wagons coming through, and it just not stopping, and it's becoming more and more and more. And you and your people have been living out here, minding your own business, having your own struggles, and now that. I mean, what would you think? Like, you'd be like, what the heck? You would have generations of your people having lived out here, and then some other group comes in and just tramples over it, basically. That'd be a tough pill to swallow. And I know now in our modern times, things are as they are, and I don't have the answers. I sympathize greatly with the plight of these people. I don't think they got a fair handshake at all. Time and time again, any tribe that I've studied, it's the same old story. But then you get in deeper, I guess, into just the whole concept of what happens when a technologically superior culture comes into something. It always seems like that's just the way of things, is that that wins out. Which is why I kind of agree with, like, I think Stephen Hawking's sentiment about alien life and being careful about not broadcasting that we're out here. Because if there are aliens and there is another species out there that came all the way to Earth, why would they be coming here? Maybe they would be here just to observe us and research. Maybe they already are. But chances are, if they travel those kind of distances, maybe it's out of necessity and they need resources. And if they're able to do that, why would we not go the way of the indigenous people here as humans? To me, it makes sense. I wonder if there's just a universal way about that. You never know. Maybe we would make great pets one day for some other species. Don't want to think about that, but I mean, that's probably one good way to relate to maybe how the natives were treated and felt. Now, of course, if you put all your faith into modern movies and movies like Independence Day, of course, if the aliens came and tried to trample us, that shows you that humanity always kicks the aliens' butts, right? All you gotta do is send Randy Quaid up and give him a good, "Hello, boys, I'm back," and then everything's all good. Whew, I was getting worried there for a minute. Because, of course, if, aliens like that traveled, interstellar distances and had the technology to do that, us primates down here would kick their ass every time, right? Okay, so I think the next stop on our little dime tour, our blow through here, is I want to see this register rock. I want to see more marks of the past. So much larger than the register rock we saw near Massacre Rocks. That was just one little boulder. This is a whole thing, just like Camp Rock. It's Camp Rock Part 2. And I'm assuming it's called Register Rock for the same reason. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it has nothing to do with that, but pretty sure it does. Do you guys see the familiar markings now of what we've been looking at? They're all over here, and we're gonna get close to them. They don't have a fence protecting these, but the other ones they did, which is weird. But here's a sign that kind of talks about it. Daniel Tickner traveled the California Trail 3 times from Illinois. The first trip on horseback brought him and his friend A. Freeman through City of Rocks on June 12th of 1850. Daniel was looking for his brother-in-law in the gold fields of California. And he came back in 1852, and he was in a prairie schooner, see, with his wife and children. And then he came back in 1857, and he and his wife survived cholera in a hostile attack along the Humboldt River. So we want to look for D. Tickner and A. Freeman. And I think it's this guy here, I'm guessing, and that's his wife, Mary. So it's really haunting to see the actual face of someone. Yeah, Daniel and Mary Tickner. So if we can find D. Tickner, then it's just haunting to see the face of the same person whose hand probably wrote something here. Actually, I think I see A. Freeman and D. Tickner. It's really large. It's right there. Oh, wow. So keep that in the back of your head. You know, he did it 3 times. And he survived cholera. And he survived attacks from native people. Like, he would have had a taste of all of it. Probably the excitement and the horror. And there it is, A. Freeman, June 12th of 1850, and D. Tickner, June of 1850 once again, same day. So they were here together, like he said, he was traveling with his friend, and he put his mark up there for all to see. He found a good spot. That's a John Hancock kind of signature. So if you played that game Oregon Trail, once again, this is not the Oregon Trail, but it's closely related to that. Same time frame, same purpose. So like these would have been the OG real people that played the real game in real life. And now if we zoom out more, you can see it's just name after name, some very faded, some very readable still. Like W. Moore. I see an 1840 something. So these seem older than the ones at Camp Rock. Anybody have any explanations for that? I'm curious. Or was it just that I couldn't really read dates very carefully? So here's something that's probably more modern. I'm gonna guess that's May 30th, probably of 2014. Maybe it's not. Maybe that's 1914. Certainly not 1814. That seems too early. It's more of a petroglyph than I don't know what you would call these. Technically a pictograph in a way, if you think about it, using pigments and things to probably just like I said, using I'm guessing they probably just took wet charcoal or something and then scribbled that on there, and it just preserves amazingly well. Sometimes, but then sometimes not. Like, look at how faded some of these are. Like, why are some of them unreadable? And then why is W. Moore and then our friends up there, why do theirs like stand out so much? I don't know. And here's another one. That would be 18. I think that looks like an 11/3/57, November 3rd, which I guess would have been late in the season for traveling, that kind of thing. But I don't know. But these things are everywhere. I mean, if you had time and patience, you could probably decipher a lot more than I'm able to at this point. And maybe when I review the footage later, sometimes it's easier to see things on camera than with your own eyes. Sometimes the camera does better things with contrast and stuff, but absolutely fascinating. My favorite, though, is A. Freeman and D. Tickner, especially because of the background we were just given. And yeah, if you just could rewind that clock to that date, we don't know the time to get that intersection, but if we were just here and waited all day and we were like invisible and could watch this, I don't know how they propped each other up to get up that high. I couldn't reach up there without standing on something. But you would have seen these people in that Old West garb, that Old West look, hanging out here, probably campfires right around here, their wagons, their animals, probably multiple families hanging out. And if it was early enough in the morning, they'd be packing it up to head on out and do it all over again. Another day, another journey. I might even spy some black markings up that way too, but oh, look at that, up there. C.S. Peck, Buffalo, New York, I'm gonna guess. Something lady, August 10th of, I'm gonna guess 60. I'm gonna guess that's 1860. Wow. I like how even back then you gotta outdo people, and you gotta get, people probably started writing lower, and then people like our our friend Freeman and Tickner were like, nope, we're gonna outdo everybody. We're gonna put it up here, and maybe they used something different than charcoal or whatever they used. They're like, we're gonna make sure this thing is readable for hundreds of years to come. But I did just have a thought, because I travel a lot, you know that. I go to a lot of like old sites, old mining towns, ghost towns, some very off the grid, and almost all have some kind of graffiti, modern graffiti. But why, like when we look at old graffiti, I don't see any F words, I don't see any S words, I don't see any nasty stuff. But in modern times, like you find just nasty stuff, like really offensive, sexual, like potty talk basically. Like, how come these people didn't do that? Like, they didn't have time for those kind of shenanigans, but what if there were just like drawings of penises and like F you and all this kind of stuff, and that's what they left for us? I don't know, maybe that would be funny. I know the Romans had some pretty raunchy graffiti you can see, and I'm sure someone back then did, but I have yet to see, I'm gonna keep it family friendly, the D pic from somebody like, doing that from the pioneer times. That is the truth. All I really see is the name and the dates usually, and that seemed to satisfy them, but never have I seen a curse word yet. And if anybody knows of any, let me know. I would like to go check them out, I guess, but that just occurred to me. Like, what does that mean about us? Have we just evolved? Like, is evolution going backwards now? Is that what it is? I don't know. I'm gonna guess if we would just if you keep walking around this thing, I wasn't going to, but I feel like I need to now because there's stuff everywhere. There's more over here. I'm guessing people camped all around the rocks. There's really good camping spots, I'd say. Yeah, these are more faded with time, harder to read, but still no pornography, no curse words. I wonder what field of study, like in maybe the collegiate sense, would it be? Is it some kind of anthropology that would study why, like, modern graffiti is so dirty and so raunchy, but graffiti from other times is not? And more inspiring, I guess, and just more of a record? Like, why? I mean, I'm sure those people had raunchy minds too. They're human beings, and they probably told jokes, and it wasn't that dry, but like, what accounts for that? And why do we live in such a raunchy time? If you want my opinion, it's stuff like social media, people like me, the TikToker like culture, the shorts and all that. I think it's rotten our brains inside out. I think it's an American sickness. I honestly think it's destroying our country slowly but surely, if you want my real opinion. But because a lot of these people, probably like from an education perspective and things like that, I'm guessing a lot of these people that came through here didn't even know how to read or write to even write their name if they wanted to. So you probably had a lot more uneducated people than we even have today. Yet these people somehow had manners and knew how to behave themselves and get things done. And today, doesn't seem like that at times. Early morning thoughts with Glenn from the Cactus Atlas. But one thing is cool is just looking at the rocks too. The strange shapes. To me, that looks like a very weird, cartoonish old man with a big nose, like a big honker. Some kind of like caricature of somebody. What do you guys see? Do you guys see weird faces in the rocks too, or is that a sign that I got a mental illness? You gotta wonder too, that here's more here, but there probably were more on more exposed faces, and now they've been, the rains have washed them away maybe. Because this area has quite a few, and I think I see an 18, I'm gonna guess 59. Really hard to read these, but I'm guessing these don't have as much of an overhang, so if it rains, you probably just washes down here and washes that away slow by slow. So the fact that there's still faint markings is very impressive, but the ones over here, I think, are underneath like an overhang and better protected is my guess. So I'm gonna hypothesize here that there were many more, and these are transiting on their way out, and then some are probably just completely lost to time. That would make sense to me. Didn't use enough of that charcoal or whatever it was you were using. Has to be charcoal. What else? They weren't shining their shoes out here, I don't think, were they? Did they have shoe polish back then? I think I have seen some done in shoe polish one place. Yeah, for sure. It seems like this has a lot more protection from the elements when you look up there. Even like lower down, there's like little ledges. So that's probably why. It's probably not exempt from being washed away, but some of those, like Tickner and Freeman, knew what they were doing and picked a really good spot. But anyway, let's say goodbye to this, and we have to hit the road and go on our own adventure today. Many, 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 many years after these people had their adventure.
So tune in for the next installment of our adventure when we reach Great Basin National Park and wonder, why has it taken us this long to visit? Thanks for watching, and see you next time.